Greetings, upstanders. Dr. O here, and as I think about the assassination of Charlie Kirk, I learned this. This was a college campus shooting, and I learned about it right after I got out of class on my college campus, and I'm with my daughter, who's there as well, and I hear it from my other daughter at her high school who got the message, and the first thought was more violence on these campuses because clearly that's the place where I'm at. And at the time, it hadn't been confirmed that he actually had died. And then later on, I turned on Denlight and White House. Many of y'all know that's one of my favorite shows with Nicolle Wallace. I love how she does what she does and the guests she brings on. And that was when she announced through a post from Trump that he was actually dead. And we are way past the point of coming together on a nation for anybody's shooting. And I, I'm doing this about 3 hours after that, so I hadn't been on social media to see what people are saying. But I just went on social media just to see various things, and of course, the whataboutism is already starting on every side. The hate, the lack of care for anything related to Charlie Kirk because of what he said about George Floyd and other things that he's done is already out there as well. I'm saying he's a scumbag because he called George Floyd a scumbag, and some people are completely fine with his death. Some people just don't give a damn. And then of course, on the Republican side of things, they're completely blaming the Democrats. You got Laura Loomer and Stephen Miller's wife saying all types of things of what should happen to Democrats now. We don't even know who the shooter is. This was expected. This is what America does. Before I get to what Nicolle Wallace said that I just disagree with, in terms of myself, I'm not the type of person who just wishes evil on people. I don't wish for people to die, to get shot. I believe that anybody who's out there with extreme views that I feel like are dangerous, I feel like that same person could be somebody who one day could be convinced to be a peacemaker. If they engage in the right dialogues and conversations and the like. And history is full of people who, were racist or anti-Semites or Islamophobes or whatever, and in some way, shape, or form saw the light and started to become a bridge builder. And I just always hope for that from the people with whom I disagree. As a parent, I don't want to see anybody's parent taken away from them. I'm just not that person. My parents didn't raise me like that, so I'm not that. I'm not the guy who's gonna be cheering somebody dying, especially being murdered. I think that's just wrong. I think, regardless of who the person is, I don't think anybody deserves that. One of the things that Nicolle Wallace said, and she said it at least twice, I didn't catch the entire show, but in her great coverage of this, was she said that, violence isn't politics. Violence isn't politics. And what she is saying is a thing that she has always said, that all of us have said. We all condemn political, well, not all, most of us, many of us, I don't know nowadays, including myself, condemn political violence, right? That's not the way to go about things. It shouldn't happen in any way, shape, or form. I don't believe in that. But in this country, violence is politics. Violence is politics. When you look at, I mean, as recently as the insurrection, or you go back to 1898 with a violent overthrow of a democratically elected, leadership of black leadership in North Carolina. That run down the list. Harvey Milk, 1978, openly gay Congressperson out of California, military veteran. Now, of course, you look at Vietnam, like in 1970, I think there were like 1,800 bombings in this country, or bombing attempts, right? Like, what we have to do in this country to be able to move forward in any way, shape, or form, we have to understand that violence is a form of political expression in this country. Why has Trump been able to hold on to his Republican base? It's not just because of fear of being primaried by somebody Trump supports, it's also the actual fear of violence. And when you listen to people like former Utah Senator, oh my gosh, his name's escaping me, but obviously it's gonna Mitt Romney. um, when you think of when you hear him talk about what other Republicans have said to him directly, there is a fear of violence from Trump supporters. And people are, and a lot of these guys who talk about Trump behind their back, in Congress and behind closed doors and everything, will get out there and support his legislation, and they will say they are fearful of retribution on their families. That's violence. That is violence. And let's be clear, yes, people on all sides of the political spectrum commit these acts of violence. Let's also be clear that it's only Republican leaders, I'm talking about actual leaders in the House, Senate, so on and so forth, who advocate for violence. Democratic leaders don't do that. Do Democrats do that? People who are on the quote unquote left, who are liberals and so on and so forth? Absolutely. There's no question about it. But when it comes from the actual leaders, it's a one sided affair. And these Republicans who are saying so much about Charlie Kirk now had nothing to say for the Minnesota lawmakers because this is who they are. And that's something we also have to accept. If we want to end this violence, if we want to end what we do in this country as it relates to how we express ourselves, we have to target it and admit it straight on. We can't have this conversation of this isn't America. It is America. Medgar Evers, I mean, run down the list. This is America. This is what we do. The school shooting in Denver happening around the same time. And so I'm not going to get into this, chickens coming home to roost. Charlie Kirk deserved this. He had it coming. I'm just not here for it. But we have to accept the fact that this is unfortunately an acceptable form of political expression in this country, and it starts from the top down with Trump, who on so many times and so many levels has expressed violence and wanting to commit acts of violence. And people like Nancy Mace are coming out and saying this shooting is on the Democrats' hands. But when she's confronted about what Republicans said or have not said about the assassinations in Minnesota, then it was like, how dare you, how dare you, how dare you? We have to own it all as a country as we condemn it. This is what we have to do if we want to move forward. And then, of course, you add the access to guns. And I don't believe in this issue. Someone else I was listening to on her show, I couldn't tell because I was driving. He was talking about this both sides of the political rhetoric. You have people, again, I don't call them the right because they're wrong on many issues. People on the extreme side of Republicans and MAGA and so on and so forth. Calling people aliens and animals and vermin and all of this other type of stuff, and that's bad. And then on the other side, you got people from the left, from the liberals, calling Republicans, fascists and all of that, and that's leading to violence. And I believe that that's a false equivalence. I believe that that's a false equivalence because in many issues with these, people who are being demonized, who are, immigrants, undocumented people, they're not doing anything towards anybody. We're not talking people are going to pull up a violent criminal who did something. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about in general. I'm talking about the pregnant mothers being thrown on the streets. They're being attacked. But we can't have fascist actions in this country or racist actions in this country or authoritarian actions in this country and not call it that. If we would call it that in any other country, we have to be able to call it here. So call it out here. So again, we can't have this false equivalence of the violence. Yes, violence comes from all sides of the spectrum, but Republican leaders are the ones on the leadership side who embrace calls for violence and don't condemn it enough when it happens to people they don't care for, like Paul Pelosi, who Trump joked about, and several other people who he has joked about. And we have to be real about that. Charlie Kirk shouldn't have been murdered today. The school shooting in Denver should not have happened today. The two kids who were murdered in Minneapolis and the 17 others who were shot shouldn't happen today. But it does. And it happens on a regular basis. And we have to call it out and confront it. And we know that these Republicans are not going to do that. Many of them are already saber rattling. Many of them are already riling up their base for whatever they're going to do next. Charlie Kirk's organization, Turning Point USA, has doxed people that I know, put out their addresses for doing DEI work or being engaged in other types of things. Yet with all of that, I'm not going to sit here and say this person deserved to die. Actions, but what people are doing that is putting out violent and hateful and racist and homophobic and anti-trans rhetoric needs to be called out and it needs to be condemned. And yes, it's important that we put ourselves in spaces where we can have debates, where people can disagree and people can go back and forth. And many people are praising Charlie Kirk for doing that, even though some of the things that he said were extremely vile and disrespectful towards some of the communities he was talking about. But I do believe we need to put ourselves in positions where we are able to do the work towards finding common ground. I don't believe that was something that Charlie Kirk was interested in. But at the end of the day, as it relates to the rest of us who are here, we need to get out there and continue to do that work and demonstrate what that looks like. Whether you love this man or hate him, he hated him, or somewhere in between, it is a sad day in America, because here we go again. And here, so what are we going to do about it? As Joe Madison said, what are you going to do about it? You may not care, you may care, you may feel sad, you may not give a damn, but you are in this country as well. And you are a leader or a potential leader. What do you want people to be doing when you're coming out with views that they feel like you have that are problematic, or too quote unquote woke, or on the flip side too anti-Semitic, or too racist, or too Islamophobic, or well, how do you want people to respond to you, or people that you know and respect and support financially, politically, and the like? Because we literally live in a country where it can happen to anybody. Larger figures like this, folks down the street. And I don't want it to happen to anybody. And that included Charlie Kirk. And if you think that taking out one person is going to stop something, that's not how it works. Ideas don't die. Like Dr. King said, you can't legislate morality, but you can regulate behavior. He's talking about stopping the violence. That is where the work needs to happen. And more of us need to be committed to doing that before it hits more people's doorsteps in very personal ways. And that's what I'm about. And that's the work that I'm going to be about going forward. And I hope you'll be about the same. Peace.